Deadly Tarantula Girl coming to you from my private serpentarium tonight to bring you another breeding video. And tonight I'm going to be breeding Heteroscodra maculata, also known as the HMAC, and what's the common name? I can't remember at all. Comment below if you know what the common name is to help all of the other people out there, and I'll make sure to put the common name in the description. So I'm going to be doing a breeding loan today with Carlos Lucero's male, and so I'm pretty psyched about that. This is actually the third attempt. I don't know whether or not they copulated before. I didn't receive confirmation on that, so what I'm gonna do this time is I'm going to put them in a large arboreal breeding chamber together, which this is what I do a lot of times when you have animals that don't want to pair in front of you. I use this for Metallica, Subfusca, Regalis, HMAC. Without further ado, let's just introduce the couple. I have my large arboreal enclosure, I have tongs, I have nets. It's just been all freshly misted. One thing I kind of do to encourage breeding is simulate the rainy season. So I always make sure my breeding chamber is nice and wet, and that's been effective for me in the past. So usually I like to introduce the female first. I'm just going to put her entire enclosure in here, and the lid is just set on there. Then I'm gonna add Carlos's male to the mix. Now I would obviously caution anyone from reaching in here when they're a loose HMAC, but at this time the lids are still set on there. You want to make sure to have some barriers up in there that can kind of give each of the animals their own individual territory. And I know that seems silly because, you know, they can climb right over it, but in the wild they live in very small areas, and this can feel very safe for them if they know that they can run back into their own enclosure or not see the other animal and really and truly feel like they're getting away, that they kind of have their own habitat. So I go ahead and rain on them both, and you know, this is pretty subtle. I do dump water in there before I put them in there to really moisten that cork, but on this I just kind of give them a light misting. And for those of you who are like, oh, she's spraying her tarantulas, at this point, since I've just moved them around, they're kind of hiding down in their little caves, and this is just something that I do, that I put the lids that belong to the enclosures also inside of here, or else otherwise when you're done and you're taking them out, you're like, no, where are the lids? So that's just a little tip. Okay, so his enclosure is behind the bark and hers is in front of it, and they also do have a water dish in there too, just to help boost humidity. And of course both of these animals have been heavily fed before this. So what I am going to do now is just put the lid on this whole thing. So to be clear, both of their enclosures are open, but they both have their own little hiding spaces, and then the lid is on this. So they have a large area to roam, relatively large, but they're pretty safe in there. I very, very rarely lose an animal using this technique. I mean, it is very unusual. I think maybe I've had one Poecilotheria metallica die, but I also too think that he may have died of old age. So I often cohabitate for animals for 2 to 4 days, depending on the circumstances, maybe up to a week. This is gonna sound really terrible, but if I have a really old male that I know is close to the end, I might actually leave him in there for longer, like 5 to 7 days, knowing full well that if she eats him, that means that they bred and that was his purpose, was to nourish her in order to live on and spread his seed. successfully into the world. And so this was HMAC breeding with Deadly Tarantula Girl and Carlos Lucero. I'm gonna find a nice quiet place to put this. I do check on them a few times a day. If they look like they're really stressed, I will separate them, but honestly, I have a pretty easy time doing this. So I hope that pretty soon I'll be bringing you an HMAC video, and I'll see you guys then.